Because of his conduct, they pardoned him a few years and he got out. And he got out when he was still very young, 45 years old.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're looking at 10 of the worst criminals that were released.
Didn't like the deal that they made and had a feeling that there was more to Karla Homolka than meets the eye.
For this list, we're examining the most heinous offenders and lawbreakers who were released from confinement, even if they've since been imprisoned again. What do you think of these stories? Let us know in the comments below. Wolfgang Abel and Marco Furlan. The crimes of this serial killer duo spanned multiple years and European countries. From 1977 to 1984, Abel and Furlan, aka Ludwig, allegedly killed between 10 and 28 people across the continent. The two had a penchant for setting fires and were known to leave fascist-themed leaflets at the site of their crimes. Their spree ended in northern Italy when they failed to set fire to a disco. Both were imprisoned, despite reportedly claiming that they were innocent fall guys. Abel and Furlan were given lengthy sentences, but they've each since been released, and as of 2023, are free. Somkid Pumpuang. A Thai serial killer, Somkid Pumpuang murdered 5 women throughout the first half of 2005. Between January and June of that year, Pumpuang traveled throughout the country and took the lives of cafe singers and masseuses.
He lures them to the best hotel in town with stories of affluence and power.
He was eventually apprehended in the northeastern town of Chayapum and later given life in prison.
Somkid Pumpuang has received 4 death sentences and 1 life term from the criminal court. All but the Longpong case is commuted to life imprisonment as he confessed to his crimes and was cooperative during the prosecution.
However, his behavior while imprisoned was reportedly very good, and his sentence was commuted to 13 years, ensuring his release in 2019. He was a free man for about 7 months when he killed his girlfriend, Rasami Mulichan. Pumpuang was again arrested and received a death sentence. Louis van Schoor. Hailing from South Africa, Louis van Schoor is also known as the apartheid killer.
I presume a lot of people perceive that I'm a violent person. No, I'm not violent.
Apartheid was a form of racial segregation that occurred in South Africa from the late 1940s to the early 90s. This system segregated Black Africans and ensured that the smaller white population held much of the power. Van Schoor worked as a security guard during this time and used his position to kill many Black and mixed-race individuals.
He always said, man, I know the law. I used to be inside the court. I know how the magistrate thinks, so I will never get caught.
End of 87, 88, I heard that there was an investigation against me.
He was apprehended once apartheid ended and imprisoned for 2 attempted murders and 7 deaths. Unfortunately, the true number of fatalities he caused may be around 100. He was in prison for just 12 years, being released in 2004.
I've got a chance to start over now. All I'm asking now is give me a chance to see if I've improved, if I'm a better person.
Nikolai Zhumagaliyev. Soviet serial killer Nikolai Zhumagaliyev has been in and out of institutions. He was working as a firefighter in what is now Kazakhstan when he committed his first crime, before continuing to take people's lives throughout 1979. One of these incidents had him placed in Russia's Serbsky Center, a psychiatric hospital where he received a schizophrenia diagnosis. He was there for under a year, eventually being released as a free man. However, he ended up continuing to kill. Zhumagaliyev was arrested in December of 1980 and again placed in a psychiatric facility. But he proceeded to escape in 1989. He was caught once more in 1991 and has remained at a mental health hospital ever since. David McGreevy. Known by names like the Monster of Worcester and the real Friday the 13th killer, David McGreevy committed a heinous crime on April 13, 1973.
Can you describe McGreevy to me?
He seemed just like a normal person, really. He used to play with the children.
About 1 year before this, he started staying with his friend Clive Ralph and Ralph's family. McGreevy often babysat the couple's children as they worked. On the night of April 13th, he took the lives of Paul, Dawn, and Samantha Ralph when their parents were out of the house. He was sentenced to life in prison and spent roughly 45 years inside.
Because he he pleaded guilty. It was over pretty quickly, and it was a slightly anticlimactic hearing in one respect.
Despite being mistreated by fellow inmates, McGreevy was said to be a model prisoner and had reportedly changed his behavior. As such, he was released on parole in 2018.
He was refused parole on 9 occasions, and the parole board this time have decided that his risk is low enough that he could be trusted to serve the rest of his life sentence outside of prison.
Karla Homolka. This is one of the most notorious names in Canadian history. On 2 separate occasions in the early 90s, Karla Homolka and her then-husband Paul Bernardo took girls off the streets of Ontario and killed them. The victims' names were Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. Prior to this, Homolka and Bernardo had severely mistreated and indirectly killed Homolka's younger sister Tammy. After they were caught, Homolka downplayed her involvement in the murders, claiming that she was a victim of coercion and abuse.
If I didn't say the right thing, he'd hit me. He held knives to my throat. He told me I better watch my back. He said, always watch your back with me.
However, evidence reportedly proved she was lying. Nevertheless, she was given a lenient sentence and testified against Bernardo.
Never believed a word she said. Didn't like the deal that they made and had a feeling that there was more to Karla Homolka than meets the eye.
She was charged with manslaughter and spent 12 years in prison before being released in 2005.
Since then, she's kept a low profile, going by the name Leanne Teal. And for the past 2 years, she has reportedly lived in this suburb south of Montreal with her husband and their 3 children.
The Leinz Angels of Death. We're referring to 4 nurses' aides who worked with vulnerable patients in Vienna. Waltraud Wagner, Maria Gruber, and Irena Lydolf were all rather young, their ages spanning from 19 to 23. The 4th member was Stefania Meyer, who was 43. It started when Wagner took a patient's life, and liking the way it made her feel, got the others to join her in continuing. They would fatally harm an undetermined number of victims throughout much of the 1980s. They admitted to 49 killings, though the true count is possibly much higher. Wagner and Lydolf were given life sentences, Meyer 20 years, and Gruber 15. The latter 2 got out first, and both Wagner and Lydolf were later freed on, quote, good behavior. Charlene Gallego.
She was the coldest stone-cold killer.
A couple from California. Gerald and Charlene Gallego caused severe harm in the general Sacramento area between 1978 and 1980. Gerald had a bad history. His father was executed for taking a cop's life, and he himself had built quite a criminal record by the time he started killing with Charlene. Dubbed the love slave killers, the couple took 10 lives and were known to exploit their victims. Charlene, however, was given a lesser sentence in exchange for testifying against her partner. She did so and received just under 17 years in prison, getting out in 1997. Gerald was given a death sentence, but ultimately passed away due to illness.
But not before the bodies of Brenda Judd and Sandra Colley were finally discovered. Nearly 21 years after Charlene and Gerald had abducted them from the fair in Reno.
Arnfinn Nesset. Norwegian nurse Arnfinn Nesset was hired to manage a long-term care home in the municipality of Orkdal. Sometime after his tenure began, many patients started dying under mysterious circumstances. It was enough to draw the attention of the police, who proceeded to look into Nesset. They found their man. He admitted to killing 27 patients using a paralytic medication called succinylmethonium chloride. As with many cases on this list, there may have actually been far more fatalities. Despite retracting his confession, he was found guilty and given a 21-year prison sentence, though he was only incarcerated for 12 of them. Rumor has it he's now living anonymously. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Pedro López. Also known as the Monster of the Andes, Pedro López is one of the worst criminals in history. 110 victims have been officially attributed to him, but the real number may be well over 300.
López relished the attention. He wasn't shy about discussing his crimes or philosophizing about life and death on camera.
He was eventually apprehended after a failed kidnapping in 1980, and when questioned about his motive, he essentially professed that he wanted to steal childhood innocence.
March 1980, serial killer Pedro López led police to the burial sites of many of his young victims.
The highest penalty for homicide in Ecuador back then was 16 years, so this is what López received. He was eventually freed and deported to Colombia.
Because of his conduct, they pardoned him a few years and he got out. And he got out when he was still very young, 45 years old.
There, he spent further time in a psychiatric care facility, but was let out in 1998. Authorities are now after López for a different murder. As of 2023, he remains uncaptured.